Alec Baldwin, Tears of Relief. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. You may be familiar with the detailed analysis that I undertook in relation to Alec Baldwin, which explained why he's a narcissist, and that he is an upper lesser type B. I'd encourage you to watch that if you have not done so already. It explains all the various criteria that establish why he is what he is, and also that, as per my categorization, he's what is known as an upper lesser type B narcissist. Similar with regard to the behaviours of Donald Trump or Andrew Tate, in that he's in your face, that he has a low threshold on his ignited fury. He calls it as he sees it. He's aggressive. He's boastful. He's bombastic. He's belligerent. The number of individuals that have had run-ins with him, particularly in relation to those who have been out on the street in New York, will testify to that. Baldwin has faced a sustained and repeated threat to his control as of late, following the death of Helena Hutchins on the set of Rust some time ago. This resulted in civil suits and criminal prosecution against Alec Baldwin, and his criminal trial had just begun. The presence of a criminal trial, of course, is a threat to control of the narcissist, because the suggestion that he has done wrong is a threat to him. The suggestion that he has hurt somebody else is a threat to him. The suggestion that he ought to be punished is a threat to him. And, of course, potential incarceration, which could have been a potential outcome of the court case, is a similar threat to control. Thus, the whole shebang is repeatedly a problem for the narcissist. That's why you will see many narcissists engaging in the denial. Even though the evidence is stacked against them, they will deny that they've done anything wrong, and will often issue denials in the face of evidence which is laughably overwhelming. A good example of that is Darrell Brooks, the ridiculous individual who mowed down people at a Christmas parade, who maintained his innocence and repeatedly argued with the judge. If you'd like an analysis of his behaviours, then all you need do is look at the series about him amongst my playlists. But back to Alec Baldwin. A narcissist who needs control, having his control threatened repeatedly. Thus, on a daily basis, the presence of this forthcoming trial loomed large in the Baldwin household. There may be reportage of it on television. There might be friends asking, "How are you doing in relation to the case, Alec?" There may be meetings that he has to have with his attorney, interviews that take place in relation to it. Thus, its presence is felt like the ghost at the feast. On a day-to-day basis, he would nullify those threats to control largely by continuing to maintain his innocence, a denial of guilt, and basically saying to his wife, "I didn't do it, you know. They provided the gun to me. It was somebody else's fault. It was the armourer's fault. It wasn't me." The blame shifting. Thus he would maintain that he had done nothing wrong. But the presence of those sustained threats to him would also create a degree of anxiety, because that anxiety would propel him to take steps to nullify that threat to control. The narcissism makes the narcissist feel a particular way and think a particular way to motivate the narcissist to take the appropriate steps in the pursuit of the prime aims. Thus, in some instances, it would make him feel furious. "Who do these people think they are, levelling charges against me, Alec Baldwin? I didn't do anything wrong. They're trying to frame me." In other instances, he would feel anxious about the prospect of going to chokey, that somebody might want to bum him, that he'd be taken away from his family. And thus that causes him to rail against it and complain, thus enabling him to assert control indirectly. But along came his trial, and the charges against him have been dismissed. As Tony Diver reports in The Telegraph, Alec Baldwin wept in court on Friday as a judge unexpectedly dismissed a case against him for manslaughter on the set of Rust. The case was brought to an abrupt close in New Mexico after the judge, Mary Marlowe Summer, accused the state of withholding evidence. Baldwin was accused of the accidental death of a cinematographer after a prop gun he was using discharged a live round on set. He had been told the gun was cold and safe to use, but was accused of brandishing it dangerously during rehearsal. "There is no way for the court to right this wrong," said Judge Summer, accusing the state of bringing undisclosed evidence to the trial when it had already begun. "The state's withholding of the evidence was willful and deliberate," she added. "Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice." Mr. Baldwin's life and livelihood, thus both threats to control, has been under threat for 3 years after the death of Helena Hutchins, the cinematographer. He faced 18 months if convicted. Erlinda Johnson, one of the state prosecutors on the case, resigned on Friday, the 4th prosecutor to quit or be forced to step down. "I did not intend to mislead the court," lead state prosecutor Carrie Morrissey said after taking the unusual step of defending herself from the witness stand. "My understanding of what was dropped off at the sheriff's office is on the computer screen, and it looks absolutely nothing like the live rounds from the set of Rust." The actor's lawyers said that the Santa Fe's sheriff's office took possession of live rounds as evidence in the case, but failed to list them in the Rust investigation file or disclose their existence to defense lawyers. They also alleged the rounds were evidence that the bullet that killed Hutchins came from Seth Kenny, the movie's prop supplier. Mr. Kenny has denied supplying live ammunition to the production and has not been charged in the case. He had been expected to testify against Baldwin. The Colt .45 rounds at the centre of the case's dismissal were handed into the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office on March the 6th by Troy Tesk, a friend of Thel Reed, the stepfather of Rust armourer Hannah Gutierrez, on the same day Gutierrez was convicted of involuntary manslaughter for Hutchins' death. A Santa Fe County Sheriff Office technician, Marissa Popple, testified before the judge on Friday that the rounds were not hidden from Baldwin, and she was told to file them and details on how they were obtained under a different case number to the Rust case. She disputed the assertion of Alex Spiro, Baldwin's lawyer, that the Colt .45 ammunition matched the round that killed Hutchins. Ms. Morrissey had questioned the allegation the evidence was concealed from Baldwin. "If you buried it, how did the defense attorneys know how to cross-examine you about it yesterday?" Ms. Morrissey asked. Prosecutors accused Gutierrez of bringing the live rounds onto the set, an allegation she denied. Prosecutors alleged Baldwin played a role in the death of Hutchins because he handled the gun irresponsibly. His lawyers say Baldwin was was failed by Gutierrez and others responsible for safety on the set, and that law enforcement agents were more interested in prosecuting their client than finding the source of a live round that killed Hutchins. Baldwin was acquitted by the judge's direction on what is known as a Brady direction, and this means that the threat to control that was exhibited, that has hung over Alec Baldwin, disappeared in an instance. That the threat to his livelihood disappeared. That the threat to his liberty disappeared. And with that came the tears. Now, it's fairly unusual for an upper lesser type B narcissist to exhibit tears, particularly in public. But this was his narcissism's response to the existence of the threat to control. That in a way, it was like he had his own personal jailer reminding him of the fact that he could be going to choke. And that built up by way of pressure because it was sustained and would occur each day. No matter how much his narcissism compartmentalized, it wasn't able to dismiss it because it kept coming back. He would nullify the threat to control in the moment, and then it would come back. And then he would nullify the threat to control in the moment, and it would come back. And thus, he was under that sustained pressure. And therefore, his narcissism, by way of release from that pressure, caused him to turn on the waterworks, which was both an expression of relief, but also, of course, performative. Because his narcissism allowed it to take place in a courtroom so that he was able to control those around him through eliciting sympathy. Thus, he hugged his lawyer, he hugged his wife. all done to ensure, of course, that they were under control, because you must not lose sight of this fact that, as ever, when it comes to the narcissist interacting with other people, the narcissist is driven by the pursuit of the prime aims. There's no exception to this rule. There's no part-time nature of its application. Where a narcissist is interacting with one or more people, or contemplating such interaction, the pursuit of the prime aims governs the narcissist's behavior. Thus, here, the prime aim of control, namely the threat to it, was affected by the presence of this court case, resulting in the reaction of relief of tears, but also the relief of those tears were performative in nature to elicit sympathy from those watching the trial on television and those in the courtroom also. Thus, once again, a narcissist evades liability as a consequence of an error, this time by the state, and it results in a performance of tears from Alec Baldwin, usually so boastful and belligerent, not showing a soft side, not showing that he's human, but simply his narcissism, allowing that to be the case as a consequence of relief and the continued assertion of control over those around him. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.